Here is a psychokinesis experiment that you can do from the comfort and privacy of your own home. And all you need is a coin and a bunch of your weird little nerd friends. Really anyone that you can wrangle into doing this, but I find it easiest to recruit people who are like myself, or perhaps like you, who are a little bit strange and nerdy and therefore would be into something like this. Also helps if they're small, if they're little, in the event that you need to physically wrangle people into doing this, if you need to use force. So get 3 or more of you in a group and take out your coin. You're obviously going to have to do this before the globalists convert us to central bank digital currency, their version of crypto, and coins are a thing of the past, as rare as a golden Pikachu or a shadowless Charizard. And all I want you to do is collectively focus on tails. Tails, tails. I want you to see it in your mind's eye. I want you to envision it. And you are going to send G-Wash for a little spin. 100 times. Which is why you may have to wrangle dwarves in order to get this done, is because it sounds a little bit boring, but it's cool, I promise. Keep a tally of how many times it lands on heads versus tails. And according to chance expectation, it should, of course, be about 50-50. Half the time it's going to land on heads, half the time it's going to land on tails, according to chance. Of course, there is going to be a little bit of variability, which is why we have to repeat this and flip it 100 times again for the control group. And this time I want you to think about not heads or tails, okay? Literally anything else. You can think about golden Pikachus, wrangling dwarves, what you're going to eat for lunch, eating golden Pikachus for lunch. Think about anything except heads or tails. Don't focus on influencing the turn of the coin. And keep a tally for the control group as well, and then you are going to compare the results. So you might find something like in the control group, where you were focusing on anything but heads or tails, you find that 51 of the flips of the coin, what do you call that? As a coin flip, right? 51 of the flips are on tails, and the remaining 49 are on heads. And then you look at the group where you were setting the intention for it to land on tails, and you may find that it landed on tails 58 times, and the other times it landed on heads. Do you like how I sidestepped doing basic math there? Maybe the experiment doesn't work at all and you just end up with a bunch of angry hobbits glaring at you. But often people will do this experiment and they find pretty statistically significant results. That being said, it's a fun little at-home experiment we can do. Shouldn't be taken too seriously one way or another. But psychokinesis, okay, this is very serious business. And in this video, I'm really excited to share with you a possible reason why psychokinesis might work and a 30-year ongoing experiment that is testament to the fact that it exists. So why does PK work, or any psi phenomena for that matter? Well, it goes back to something that we often say on this channel, which is that we are one consciousness manifesting as infinite possibilities. And that turn of phrase is meant to get at the idea that everything is fundamentally interconnected. Me, you, your dog, the people you love, the people you can't stand, etc. It's all connected. How? Well, there is reason to believe that consciousness does not inhabit matter, but matter grows out of consciousness. And there's only one consciousness. Look, no one exactly knows how the whole mysterious existing thing works.
Well, look at that! We're here. How did we get here? Why are we here? What does it mean? Can we figure it out?
I would like you to try on an idea hat with me. We are spirits having a human experience. We are something beyond these physical bodies. We are not just accidental glimmers of consciousness between our ears, okay, as the materialist paradigm would have us believe. We are not, our self is not the result of one area of our brain passing off a thought baton to another area of our brain, but rather, underneath everything that we can see and hear and touch, and perhaps even underneath everything that our logical left brain can comprehend, there is something else. A lot of people already know this intuitively, and the classical mystical experience is further confirmation of this. So in the mystical experience, a mystic's consciousness melds with something much bigger, and they have a sense of being one with all that is. And the direct experience of the great mystery is not limited to any one culture or group of people. It is something that has been ubiquitous. It is cross-cultural, this phenomenon, this transcendent experience. And you can read about it from Benedictine nuns, from Buddhist monks, from Sufi saints, from our ancestral shaman. It's everywhere. One model to help us wrap our logical left brains around this concept as best it can grasp it is to imagine that underneath everything there is a field of consciousness, and this field connects everything. And the things that we perceive as separate in our environment, like you, me, that chair, your dog, are actually just unique expressions of that same consciousness. So you and me were the same thing, just different packaging. And this is what makes things like telepathy possible, hypothetically. And so there's so many stories out there of like telepathy and precognition, but one I just read recently is that there is a mom chopping veggies in a kitchen, and her kid is over at the neighbor's house, and mom all of a sudden knows that her kid is drowning. She can't see him, she can't hear him, but she can feel him. And so she runs to the neighbor's house, jumps the fence, and pulls her drowning kid out of the pool. How's that possible? Because everything is connected, and also to varying degrees. The kid and the mom are very connected, like their energy. The mom and I are connected, the kid and I are connected, but again, all to varying degrees. Idea sex for another time. The point I want to make here is that things like telepathy and PK are possible because everything is interconnected. In the case of PK, it's like that kid from The Matrix said, "It is not the spoon that bends, but yourself." Maybe we'll do a spoon bending tutorial sometime. They're fun. Now, you would think that if everything is connected on some higher spiritual plane, that we would be able to measure it somehow down here on the 3D. Turns out we totally can. There is an experiment that's been running for 30 years called the Global Consciousness Project, and it shows us that major global events change the collective energy. And in order to understand how they've collected this data and proven this, we have to understand the technology that they use. So this goes back to a class of experiments that utilize random number generators, or RNGs. And it's one of those classes of experiments that have exceeded the 6 sigma threshold, meaning odds against chance are calculated at 1,000,000,000 to 1. In other words, no chance. It's chance. So what is an RNG experiment? An RNG experiment is like a digitized version of that coin flip. So whereas, with a coin, you get heads or tails, with a random number generator, you get you get ones or zeros. And it is truly random because it is generated by a computer. In a traditional RNG experiment, the goal of the participant is to influence the RNG in the direction of either the ones or the zeros. And studies have shown conclusively that human intention can do exactly that. And so back in, when was it? I don't know what decade it was in. They launched it in the 90s, so I imagine it was like in the 80s. So a man named Roger Nelson, Dr. Roger Nelson, took one of these RNGs and he put it in the midst of a group of meditators. And what he found is that it created order and coherence in the output of the random number generators through their simple attention, through their focus. Dr. Nelson teamed up with Dr. Dean Radin, whose work we have also discussed on this channel previously. And again, they repeated these kinds of experiments and found that people who were meditating had some kind of shared focus would influence the randomness of the RNG. It would become less random. It would become more ordered or more coherent. The Global Consciousness Project came about when they decided to place RNGs all over the world to see if humanity's collective attention would affect the randomness or the orderedness of these RNGs. What they found is insane. Not only did these machines indicate when a major global event was transpiring, but sometimes it even told us in advance of the event actually happening. For example, in the O.J. Simpson trial, hundreds of millions of people were interested in the results, and it was going to be televised, and so there was going to be a lot of attention on that. Dr. Radin, in his brilliance, was like, this would be a great time to see what the RNGs do. And they did what they expected. them to do, which is that as the verdict was read seconds after, there was a peak in order, in coherence, looking specifically at the RNGs for America and Europe. And this has been repeated again and again with the funeral of Princess Diana, with major celebrations or sporting events with the election of Barack Obama. But perhaps the most interesting thing, most interesting case is that of 9/11, because 9/11 showed also some indication of precognition. Prior to and after the event, there's sort of this baseline randomness. But in the 3-ish hours leading up to the Twin Towers falling, they saw a huge peak in order or coherence from all the RNGs in the whole friggin' world. Again, this happened in advance. Usually we see it and it's like shortly following or at the same time as. This happens in advance. And what's interesting about that is that so many people had precognitive dreams about 9/11. There's all kinds of stories out there, anecdotal, that you can go and read. Lots of people who had intuitive hits like, oh, I really feel like I shouldn't get on this plane today, which is why the load factor of all of the planes that were hijacked were significantly low, because so many people canceled their flights or didn't show up. The GCP now has over 200 of these events documented.
Simply a lot of human minds that are somehow changing randomness, or whether this is a reflection of something bigger, something like a collective mind, of which the collective mind attends to something, and collective mind includes everything else, including what we think of as matter and energy. And so the attention, the change that we see in randomness may be the same in some way. It's the same kind of organizing event that changes random events. It also changes our attention. But again, I don't know which direction the arrow of causation goes, and maybe it's so complex there is no single arrow. Maybe some giant system of some type.
The reason I think this is indicative of a collective mind is because this is what mystics have been telling us forever. First of all, they've been telling us since mystics were around. They've been telling us that mind influences matter, and science is just now starting to catch up to that. Another foundational idea in mysticism is that there is only one mind. To quote Sir James Jean, the universe begins to look more and more like a great thought and less like a great machine. That being said, Dr. Radin did touch on something I find really interesting, which is the idea that we don't know exactly what's causing this. Like, to what extent are the results of the GCP one mind influencing what's happening versus our individual human attentions? And this bridges into something I've been wondering about a lot lately, which is this. We know that we are connected to some higher thing, right? Call it God, source energy, the field, spirit, the universe. When we die, when we physically die, do we meld back into that absolute reality entirely? Do we, like a drop of water into the ocean? Or do we maintain some kind of individuality? Because reincarnation would suggest that, mediumship would suggest that, but I can make an argument for either case. I just love what Dean Radin says, and I think it might be the answer, which is that maybe it's so complex that there is no single arrow. Idea sex for another time. I would love to know what you believe about mind-matter interaction in the comments. Thank you so much for tumbling down the rabbit hole with me today. Hail to the power in the sight, and until next time, I hope you stay very, very blessed, my friends. A lot of people already, I don't know why I can't get this. I want to go to bed.